I'm a CEO, well, sort of. I'm the CEO of diapers and dinner time. I'm the senior vice president of Band-Aids and boo-boo kisses. I'm the executive director of bike helmet enforcement, even though your friend stopped wearing them years ago and you're pretty concerned about what it's doing for your reputation. I'm a mom. I have the wonderful good fortune to be stepmom to an amazing 12-year-old boy that I like to call the boy who made me real, because he gave my life new purpose the day that he came into it. My husband and I also have a 3-year-old son who we are pretty sure is going to be a professional baseball player, the next Evel Knievel, or Batman. He might do all three. We are also joyfully expecting our 3rd child in January. As I mentioned, I'm married. I have the great pleasure to be married to a man that I fell in love with on our first date and who I remain madly in love with today. But all of that is my highlight reel, and that's not why you're here. However, it is important for my story that I should tell you my highlight reel, because while every bit of it is true, what I want to talk about tonight is the disparity between the lives that we project and the realities that we live. Specifically, I want to talk about a lie. Now, this particular lie is only told by people who have children, and it's only told to people who are expecting their first child. And you've probably heard it before. You may have even told it before. And it goes a little something like this. People who have children find out that someone they know, they love, maybe a friend or a family member, is having their first child. And they say, "Congratulations! It's magical." This is a lie. Yeah. Now, maybe it's a partial lie because parts of having kids is magical. But the level of willful omission in that statement is what I take issue with. Let me give you some examples. When my youngest son was just a few days old, he peed on his own face. Yeah, laying down for a diaper change, just pew, right between the eyes. That's not magical, folks. It's not magical. I breastfed my son, and I would like to tell you that the first 5 weeks of breastfeeding are absolutely horrible. This is something that they don't often tell you, or that what to expect when you're expecting kind of glosses over. Your nipples bleed. Yeah, oh yeah. They crack and they bleed, friends. Yeah. Now what you're realizing is, oh, that is disgusting, but what you're not thinking about is that your baby still has to eat. Yeah, where's that nipple going? Yeah, you got the image now. I would sit on the couch at 3 in the morning and sob from pain, shattered with sleep deprivation. And my son would lustily cry because he was hungry, and it was 2 hours, and it was time to eat again. And I began to resent him. I resented my newborn son for his basic human needs. I can tell you that the guilt that soon follows that resentment is not magical. My labor and delivery with my son was thankfully complication-free, but it was very long. And by the time my son was born, I had been awake for well over 24 hours. I would proceed to stay awake for another 36 hours after delivery, because in almost the moment that they put him in my arms, I became consumed with a guttural fear that if I slept, my son would die. Now, I'm a reasonably intelligent woman, and I knew this fear was irrational. So I did the only thing that made sense to me. I told no one. Nearing the end of my 36-hour vigil, I began to suffer signs of exhaustion. My blood pressure skyrocketed. I had chills, but I managed to hold it together enough to be discharged from the hospital. And once we got home, I was able to sleep in between the bleeding. But I was able to sleep, but only under the circumstance that my husband would stay awake with the baby, kind of on a forced vigil of his own. As time went on, I had other fears and anxieties kind of come up like this. At one point, I was terrified to walk over concrete surfaces with my son because I could imagine in vivid detail what might happen if I were to drop him. You can imagine that this made parking lots, driveways, sidewalks kind of troublesome. I told no one. Time goes on, and my fears and my anxieties begin to compound. And even though I was staunchly telling no one, it became rather obvious that I had a problem when I started suffering panic attacks, crippling anxiety. I did a little bit of research online, and I found this website called postpartumprogress.org. It's a great resource. There I was able to take a little online assessment to determine whether or not it was likely that I had postpartum anxiety. It was likely. On that website, I was also able to connect with a local therapist who specialized in postpartum mood disorders. Now, you probably haven't heard of postpartum anxiety. That's because most people haven't. You probably heard of postpartum depression, but that's one of just a few postpartum mood disorders that women can deal with. There's postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and the very scary postpartum psychosis. So I connected with this therapist, and 2.5 years after the birth of my son, I was able to heal and to get help. But 2.5 years is a long time to be afraid. And I started thinking about, why did it take me so long to admit that I had a problem and to seek the help that I needed? And I thought a lot about it, and I kind of landed on this highlight reel thing. You see, we live in a time that is so saturated by social media. Everyone is so obsessed with putting forth this image that is filtered and vignetted just so. And we don't see what's just out of frame. We, as a community of parents, have done a shitty job at creating an environment where it's acceptable for people to experience the suckiness of new parenthood along with the magic. We take new parents and we put them in a rickety little boat, we toss them a completely unnecessary butt wipe warmer, and we push them out to sea, right as the storm clouds are building on the horizon. So when I found out that my sister-in-law was expecting her first baby, I had a choice. I had this moment where I thought, God, I want to create this environment for you that's acceptable, that's honest, not fear-mongering, but honest. Sometimes it sucks, but I'm here, and it's okay. So she's looking at me with the same hopeful, nervous eyes that I remember having when I was expecting my first son. And I took a deep breath, and I looked at this beautiful woman who I love, and I said, "Congratulations. It's magical." And then I pushed her little boat out to sea. Thank you.